Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson. Looking ahead to, what week are we in, Sam? 11?
11.
Okay. Looking ahead to week 11. Sometimes I lose track. We're going to hit every game. We'll hit on the big ones, especially the Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Rams, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Chicago Bears. We have some answering to do to all of our Bears fans. Did you know that Chicago is our #1 listening city up till this point?
But only because you told me that. You have been down this rabbit hole this week of Chicago Bears fans, Trubisky hate. You even unearthed some Trubisky for MVP people. That's how deep into this thing you went.
I went way down the rabbit hole. Look, it's not, I know it's actually not a good thing to do because sometimes you focus on the 4 or 5 people that are against you and you go to defend yourself, when the reality is the majority of our millions and millions of listeners like what we do. They liked our Trubisky takes because it's everything we do is objective and, through the same eyes and all that stuff.
We'll go that far.
We'll talk about it, though.
I'm just saying, when you reach the point where you stumble upon Trubisky for MVP people, that's when you know you've strayed too far from the herd and you need to start reversing, trace your steps back to find humanity again. Let's
not aggravate too many other Chicago fans. They're our #1 city right now.
Okay.
Per our analytics. It might not be the same case going forward. They may have moved on, but let's try to keep the Bears fans here as best we can.
Number 2 is New York, and somewhere in the top 10 is Brooklyn. Surely, if you combine the two,
I don't know why they're
that makes
separated.
New York ahead.
I don't know why they're separated. But, okay, as we start every preview podcast, though, we must predict the past.
Yeah.
The future. It's the future for us, from the past. The past for our listeners. So we're recording this at 4:05 Eastern Time. I'm looking at the time right now. 4:05 Eastern Time on Thursday. This is not fake.
No.
We are predicting Thursday Night Football, Green Bay Packers at the Seattle Seahawks. If you guys have been following along, we've been look, I don't care if we don't get another one for the rest of the year. This has been a successful undertaking.
So far.
We've predicted many things.
Regardless of how many we screw up from this point on, we're able to create a montage that makes us look like geniuses.
Yes, the montage is to be built. We already have like 6 or 7 where we just nailed it.
Right.
So now it's your turn.
Yeah.
Last week I predicted Christian McCaffrey to go off as a receiver, 2 or 3 touchdowns, and he did it.
Yes.
Packers at Seahawks tonight, Sam, for us. For everyone else, it already happened. What did they see in this game?
All right. I don't feel great about this one.
That's what I said last week.
I know, and it did come true. But this is the first one for a while that I haven't felt great about. I nailed the Mullins thing. I knew that was coming, right?
You did.
This one, I don't feel great about. But Thursday Night Football was a repeat, of course, of the famous Fail Mary game, Steve.
Yes.
The Fail Mary, for anyone that doesn't remember,
2012.
Was the replacement officials made an absolute hames, as we say, back in the old country.
What does that mean?
Made a hames of it, made a mess, made a balls of it, basically. So Hail Mary by Russell Wilson into the end zone. A Green Bay Packers player comes down with it, but it was a Golden Tate of the Seattle Seahawks at the time.
Yeah,
managed to maintain just enough contact on the defensive player that they somehow awarded as simultaneous possession, which belongs to the offensive player. So touchdown, success, win, Fail Mary, right? This was obviously the anniversary of that game, a rematch of that game, and it came back to haunt them. Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks were ahead. They led down the stretch, but Aaron Rodgers had too much time on the clock. And Aaron Rodgers marched his way to midfield before Aaron Rodgers unleashed the Hail Mary that he is so known for. And this time, it was the Green Bay Packers player who did come down with it, and a non-replacement official saw it, awarded the touchdown. Green Bay win, avenged the Fail Mary game, the end. Case closed. Fade to black scene.
Wow. That's so specific. That's risky.
That's why I'm saying I don't feel great about this one.
It's not crazy because, Aaron Rodgers has this knack for hitting Hail Marys, which is definitely luck.
I will say that because we're predicting the future here, right, and this isn't an exact science, we don't understand quite our own powers at this point, and it's a little bit muddy. So I'm going to claim victory if either team wins in a Hail Mary situation.
Oh, of course. Like
I'm just saying.
you saw Hail Mary somewhere.
Right.
Maybe you misinterpreted slightly
exactly.
who did what.
I saw Hail Mary. I'm interpreting this as an Aaron Rodgers redemption, but maybe, just maybe, Russell Wilson was the guy to unleash one and succeed with another Hail Mary.
Now, the irony of this.
Either way, that's what happened yesterday.
You know you picked Seattle?
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Look,
I did too.
My visions do not happen to coincide with my picks, right?
Yeah,
I pick the games earlier, and then I see
then,
things.
Okay.
Then I see things.
And then it's too late to change.
Exactly.
Yeah, Gordon doesn't let us change them.
No.
All right, so, hey, I'll stay up for that game. The Mullins game, I was in and out.
I mean,
I'll stay up for this one. This should be a good one. I hope it was a good game that you guys saw. Packers at Seahawks. Very specific prediction. I hope it really happened.
Yeah.
Let's get into this weekend's games. Let's jump right to Monday. Kansas City Chiefs at the Los Angeles Rams, and it really is at the Los Angeles Rams. It's no longer in Mexico. The field was in terrible shape, and they don't want anybody getting hurt. And I saw you get Pete. Somebody called you all Pete Prisco.
Yeah, people got
on
mad.
Twitter. You went straight old man, get off my lawn. Back in the day, they used to play on bad fields.
Yeah, this is the marquee matchup of the week. Yeah, apparently they held a Shakira concert on the field that they were going to play a football game on not so long ago. And that doesn't appear to have been beneficial for the field, for the turf. Did you just mute me or you?
I think it was you.
No, it was you. I just got noise through my headphones. Well, this is a top-notch production we've got going on right here.
I got my mute button. You guys are on YouTube there.
Yeah.
I think it worked for me. That was right.
No, it was. Yeah, it just... Anyway,
it startled
we'll
me.
edit this out. They'll never know. So, the Shakira concert apparently wasn't beneficial to the state of the turf. They consequently... So it came out that a bunch of players were looking at this and going, well, this is so dangerous. We're not going to risk ourselves. We're going to pull ourselves out of the game. And somewhere near that, the NFL said, okay, fine, we'll move it back to Los Angeles, and that's where we'll play it. I simply posted a tweet that was along the lines of, this feels a bit too dangerous for us. We're not going to risk ourselves. Meanwhile, back in the late 80s, you know that picture of Joe Montana in the Bengals Super Bowl? That was probably, was that the boss's last game?
Boss's last game.
So he's in the pocket, surrounded by this trench warfare that's going on between the 49ers offensive line, the Bengals defensive line. And when I say trench warfare, I mean the turf is being cut up into giant trenches.
It looks like the rolling hills of... Scotland have rolling hills?
Yeah, sure.
That's what it looked like. They were playing in the middle of Scotland.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I just said... I just made the point that, I can't imagine anyone in the... Like, Ronnie Lott played on when he had half his finger taken off. Like, he's not going to go, oh, look, there's a bump in that field. I'm not playing.
Come on, Sam. We're talking about the two most explosive offenses in the NFL. Nobody wants to see them trudging through some beat-up grass. We want to see them... So they're going to go to L.A., where USC's probably going to play a game the day before. No, so they're going to go to L.A., where we could see some explosive offense. That's what the NFL wants. What do we watch? Because this game, everybody's been pointing to this game for quite a while.
Yeah.
Even with the Rams losing to the Saints a couple weeks ago, still a marquee matchup. From the Chiefs' perspective, from both teams' perspective, it's just important for their respective races for home field advantage. The Chiefs got, a step. They're 2 games up on New England and Pittsburgh and all these other teams competing for the number 1 seed, so they're in a good spot. But the Rams, their margin of error is very small now after losing to the Saints. Yeah,
and I think this is probably the most Arena League game of the season. The Saints versus the Rams was a lot like that as well, but this should be the archetype of that, right? I don't see either of these defenses capable of slowing down the opposing offense. The concept of Marcus Peters going one-on-one with Tyreek Hill is just terrifying right now. Like, there are receivers that are a lot slower and a lot less slick in running routes than Tyreek Hill have been exposing Marcus Peters badly. Like, that just has disaster written all over it. And I don't know that the other side is that much better for the Chiefs either. Obviously, the Rams losing Cooper Kupp is a significant blow. We talked about that a bit before. But they've got so much weaponry there. There's so much talent in that scheme. And, of course, guys like Goff, guys like Todd Gurley. The Chiefs' defense, I think, is improving, but I still don't really see it being able to slow down that Rams offense. So, shootout. Yeah, this is that game you've been talking about where if the Chiefs or the Rams can just get 1 or 2 stops, that could be the difference in this one. It's about stealing possessions. Stealing possessions. There's, there's just a lot of good on both sides. I think I'm leaning Kansas City on this one, though, because we were talking about it earlier in the week, and this was still when I was thinking of it on a neutral site. Not that that matters a ton.
But, which offense do you trust to just screw up less? Or if something goes off kilter, or if the defense can take something away, who's got the better chance of succeeding? And I'm leaning toward Kansas City in that aspect, right? I'm leaning toward Mahomes, and I keep coming back to this. Everything's great within structure, but if he has to break out of the pocket and make plays outside the pocket and get plays out of structure, or if Aaron Donald is creating crazy pressure in the middle, he could still make a ton of plays and kill you. Whereas Kansas City's pass rush, what we saw from them last week with Chris Jones, Dee Ford, and Justin Houston all on the field at the same time, can they get some pressure on Jared Goff? And if they do, I don't know if he can handle it as well as maybe Mahomes.
Yeah, but that pressure was coming against...
I know, the Cardinals.
Yeah. Whereas this week it's going up against the Rams, who have one of the best offensive lines in the game this season.
Cardinals have the worst.
Yes. So it should be dramatically different from that point of view. I think they will limit that pass rush a lot, at which point, again, I think both offenses will just put up a ton of points. I don't know how you predict games like that where both teams are basically going to be scoring every time they have the ball, because it's going to come down to one random 3 and out. It's going to come down to one random turnover that just swings the game. So a lot of points. I have no earthly idea who's going to win, but I went with the Rams.
Good analysis there.
Thanks.
Any other key matchups you want to watch in this game? By the way, here's a great stat on Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh. Donald, we already know, leads the league in pressures with 67. And Ndamukong Suh is on pace for at least 56. He's on pace for more than 56. If he gets more than 56, they'll be the only interior defensive line tandem to have at least 56 pressures apiece since we started doing this thing in 2006. Because we were looking at our research team and just saying, how many teams have that type of interior pressure? Just 2 guys from the interior. And the previous teams that we looked at were all like J.J. Watt, Antonio Smith back with Houston. That was the last time that happened, where 2 guys were in the top 10 among interior defensive linemen in pressures. It was J.J. Watt, Antonio Smith in 2012. So we haven't seen this in 6 years. Suh right now is number 6, I believe, and Donald number 1 among interior defensive linemen in pressures.
Yeah, there's probably never been a team that's had, or at least in our time doing this, that's had a second interior guy as good as Suh.
Yeah, it's really an incredible combination. You mentioned Tyreek Hill, and then Travis Kelce work in the middle of the field. The Rams defense went from they're adding Aqib Talib, they're adding Marcus Peters, they've got this pass rush. They were supposed to be great. They're supposed to have this dream team quality about them, right, on both sides of the ball, but it's really been lopsided. It's really been an offensive type of team.
Yeah, it's kind of gone the way the last dream team assembly went, which is kind of falling to pieces.
The Eagles?
Yeah. I mean, that Eagles team didn't suck. It just didn't become the dream team that people thought it was.
Well, the Rams' dream team hasn't fallen apart.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it doesn't suck. It just hasn't become the dream team that everybody was talking about.
They only have 1 loss. They're dream teamish.
No, not on defense.
On
defense was the dream team part. The offense was just always going to be good.
Now, here's the thing. Here's the other thing we've been looking at. George and Eric and all the work that they're doing from an analytical standpoint, and on their podcast, The Forecast, which you guys should definitely check out, they keep saying, look, when we do our predictions and in the model, offense is the biggest key. Defense is not. Defense is far less predictive, far less stable. Home and away does matter a little bit when you start talking about good defenses. Good defenses playing at home are a big factor. But that's also part of the reason, perhaps, in addition to injuries, that the Rams' defense on paper looked like it was great and has kind of, not only has it fallen apart a little bit, but it was also very weak at linebacker and on the edge.
Yeah.
And that was the intriguing thing coming into the season. They're so strong in the secondary on paper and, of course, on the interior, but one of the league's worst linebacking cores all the way across the board.
I think Aqib Talib coming back makes a massive difference to that unit.
Yeah.
He's one of the few. There are no shutdown corners anymore. The days of being able to go one-on-one Reva style with a guy and just take him out of the game are probably gone. The rule changes have it's made that too hard. You almost can't do it anymore. But Aqib Talib is one of the guys out there that's capable of doing it in a game. Right, one off, and that's what you need. If the very minimum, he's capable of limiting a number 1 receiver dramatically versus a random corner on the guy.
Can I do my weekly anti-Gurley MVP statement real quick?
Sure.
Here's why Todd Gurley should not be in the MVP race. I was on NFL Network this week, Sam. You've been doing it a couple times. You've been on a couple times now. I got on there this week with Andrew Siciliano, and they said, hey, let's discuss your MVP race. And I'm rubbing my hands together saying, great, this is our chance to say no running backs. And I sent my notes to the producer and I said, no running backs. It's going to be Breeze and Mahomes. And they were like, oh boy, what's happening here? This will be a good conversation. So I mentioned, hey, it's a two-man race. It's Drew Brees, it's Patrick Mahomes. Andrew Siciliano's asking me, why not Todd Gurley? And I'm just like, he's a running back. He's not nearly as valuable. Goff and McVay are far more valuable to that offense than Gurley is. We certainly stand by that. If you just go by wins above replacement and WAR, Jared Goff's around 4 wins above replacement this year. Todd Gurley's barely 1 win above replacement. And then the argument for Gurley is always touchdowns. He's got 17 touchdowns, guys. And touchdowns, the argument we keep making is just they're opportunity driven. They're based off an opportunity based off of how good your offense is, how good your passing offense is. He has 15 carries inside the 5-yard line, by far the most in the NFL. It's just, Melvin Gordon, who I jokingly but seriously said is just as good as Gurley 2 weeks ago on Twitter, has 2 inside the 10. Gurley has 15 inside the 5. So just touchdown opportunity. That's where touchdowns come from. And then he's running behind the best offensive line, the best run blocking in PFF numbers.
If you're going to measure it by touchdown, that's just a silly way of doing it, right? It's like,
oh, you saved me a lot of words by saying that.
Yeah.
But that's a tough explanation because people are like, no, the name of the game, scoring points and scoring touchdowns.
Sure. But how easy was your job in doing that? That's basically, or how much opportunity did you have to do that?
Touchdowns are not everything. So Todd Gurley, not the most valuable player.
It's pretty simple. If any random running back is averaging 5 yards per carry, if you get 15 carries from the 5, you've got a lot more chance of scoring than if you do if they're from the 25 or anywhere else, just by the averages.
It's true. You're taking the Rams. I'm taking the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Little asterisk, though. I thought the game was in Mexico City when I made that pick.
It was in Mexico City when you made that pick.
Let's go to the other marquee matchup of the week. Minnesota Vikings at the Chicago Bears. All right, Bears fans, if you've stuck around through our very objective and honest Mitch Trubisky analysis, where we basically said, look, he's got some good stats that aren't as good as his throw-for-throw grading this year. That's the bottom line.
You brought the YouTube commenters back into my life by telling me how much they hated our analysis on Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
And how many thumbs downs we got on YouTube.
There was a lot of hatred.
Here's the point I would make that I think I will use that as a growth opportunity, right? And say, okay, here's something we could have done better in explaining this Trubisky deal. And our purpose of sort of that exercise of changing the numbers a little bit wasn't to change the numbers at random and say, well, look, if you had these numbers, you'd be worse. PFF does not take a collection of numbers, fold them all together, and create this quarterback metric that spits out a number, right? We are watching and we are grading every single snap, every single throw from every single quarterback. And that is how our grading, our overall grade, the number that's spit out at the very end, that's how that comes about. It's play-by-play grading of every single player in the NFL.
And the play-by-play might look, here's a +1, here's a -0.5, here's a 0, 0, +0.5, -0.5, here's a 1, here's a 0, 0, 0.
When we are using numbers to talk about these things, we're trying to use stats to articulate why that number shows up, right?
Correct.
Without being able to walk you through a play-by-play analysis of his entire game, it's easier to pull out some stats and explain why this grade actually ends up that way, right? So you start talking about turnover-worthy plays. You start talking about big-time throws, much to my dismay.
We love big-time throws. That's the first time you've ever mentioned it, isn't it?
I know, probably.
Yes.
We talk about passer rating. We talk about drop rate. These are significant things that move the line for quarterback statistics because here in particular, his passer rating does not align with PFF's grade. And it's because passer rating is not assigning blame correctly. Passer rating is just a metric that tells you how effective the overall passing game is.
Correct.
But it doesn't tell you how much of that was the quarterback and how much of that was the receivers, how much of that was defenders screwing it up. There's a bunch of things at play in passer rating that are not quarterback. Quarterback obviously is the guy throwing the ball every time, but that's not telling you whether it was accurate, whether it was a defender dropping it, whether a receiver dropped it, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of stuff plays into passer rating that doesn't get factored into the quarterback's number.
And obviously we've said over time, passer rating gets you there. Like,
yes.
Over a 15-year career.
Right.
Good.
Whereas the PFF grading, the play-by-play analysis, is factoring in every single one of these plays, whether it's good or bad. Sometimes it aligns perfectly with passer rating, and therefore we will happily use passer rating as saying, as a way of articulating that message.
Right.
When it doesn't align perfectly with that, and in fact it diverges from that dramatically because of a series of plays that get hidden in the passer rating metric, we'll try and explain why. Obviously, we didn't do a good enough job of that.
No, I think that's fair. And like I said, I think sometimes you only hear the negative feedback, and I apologize for getting too far down that rabbit hole on Twitter this week, because I try to ignore the negativity these days, because I think a lot of our listeners also came back and said, hey, that's a fair explanation, and we're fair with that. We made the same argument against Deshaun Watson last year, like, hey, hold the phone on his stats last year. They're inflated based off of how he's actually played on the field. Here's what I'm fascinated by from a matchup standpoint, though. Some of the numbers I dug up this week. Mike Zimmer and that Minnesota Vikings defense has been just fantastic against young quarterbacks, but especially when they blitz. And I remember 2 years ago, Carson Wentz was kind of rolling. His rookie season grading really well for us. He goes in, plays Minnesota, and just really struggled. Didn't know what was happening. So it made me think, okay, how is Mike Zimmer, how is that Minnesota defense done when blitzing since 2015? I put this cutoff on there. And I posted this on Twitter this week. And I showed the PFF grades for all quarterbacks against the blitz, and then PFF grades for quarterbacks who have played the Vikings when they blitz, who after a certain number of attempts. So NFL quarterbacks against the blitz since that time: Brady, Breeze, Watson, Mahomes, Matt Ryan, Carr, whatever. They're all in the 80s, 90s. All the top quarterbacks are in the top. They've got really good grades. Against the Vikings blitz since 2015, only 2 quarterbacks have graded above 70 out of 21. 19 quarterbacks have graded under 70 against the blitz, and 10 quarterbacks have graded under 60 against the blitz since 2015. The only 2 above 70, Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins, who now, of course, is on Minnesota.
And that last name was the most interesting thing on that list to me. It's that Kirk Cousins was the one guy essentially able to do something against that blitz, and it's probably not a coincidence that he's now on the team there.
And they were like, hey, he beat us. He did pretty well with this. Let's go.
We've said this for years. You see every single year there's a signing that gets made in free agency, and you can trace back the strong games that guy had against that team. You think back to Eric Walden getting signed by the Indianapolis Colts, who had basically, years worth of terrible play for Green Bay and 2 good games against the Colts.
Yes.
So they sign him to a healthy free agent deal. I mean, this is another version of that, right? It's Kirk Cousins probably impressed Mike Zimmer more than most quarterbacks, given how he was able to diagnose and deal with the blitz that he's so successful with versus everybody else.
Yeah, no. So the other interesting number about this, Mitch Trubisky on this list, he only has 16 attempts here. He's 6 for 16 in the 2 times that he's played Zimmer. One of them was his first ever game. But he's 8th from a grading standpoint, 62.7 on this list. This year, however, Trubisky's grade against the blitz is about 34. And it's another one of those where his grade against the blitz is 34 on our 0 to 100 system, which is really bad. Passer rating is about 89. So the stats are actually pretty good. So there's been a little, disconnect there. So I'm not saying, hey, Vikings should be blitzing every down. That's not how football works. But that's the matchup. I think Trubisky continues to really struggle with blitz recognition and making good decisions against the blitz. So I think this will be the matchup to watch in this game.
Yeah, and then the other thing is Khalil Mack against that Vikings offensive line, which, that looks terrible.
Yeah, that's rough.
And you think about it, it sounds simple, right? It's like Khalil Mack, okay, devastating player. Let's just chip him all day. Let's send a tight end to help. Let's double team this guy all day long. But Khalil Mack has 4 sacks when more than one blocker have attempted to block him this season. That leads the league. There was a video that I posted last week of him demolishing a chip block, running right over the left tackle and getting a sack anyway against the Detroit Lions.
Whatever. Got stepped on.
2 guys just absolutely marmalized him, got himself a sack. I don't know that there's a way of stopping Khalil Mack, particularly if you're the Vikings offensive line, which is not good.
Yeah.
Leads the league in total pressures given up. What is it, 161?
161 pressures. I think that's for the entire offense. Either way, 161 pressures allowed for the Vikings is number 1. And now that we've got more information on what quarterback play under pressure means, how do you position this whole thing? Congrats to Kirk Cousins, and kudos even, for playing really well under pressure to this point. He's made some unbelievable throws under pressure. proper kudos. Why are you mocking me?
Because
give him kudos.
What did you characterize that as earlier?
Well, I called it lucky.
Yes.
Which is really, but it's unstable, Sam, right? It's unstable. So at what point do you say kudos, Kirk Cousins? Because right now you have the #1 catchable pass rate under pressure at 83%, the #3 passer rating at 91.5.
Lucky.
However, we know that that's not in line with anything he's done in his career.
Yeah.
And it's not even that. That's not really the issue. It's just that we know that play under pressure fluctuates. So does it fluctuate in the second half of the season? Does he make it through the whole season at this high level of play, and then next year he hits a big regression? You just never know what's going to hit.
Yeah.
And it's just a risky way to play football, having Kirk Cousins under pressure over 40% of the time.
I mean,
every time he drops back. That's not the way to win football games.
No, it's a terrible game plan. I mean, you don't set out to get your quarterback under a huge amount of pressure because for some reason he's playing really well under pressure at the moment. Like, it's still worse than if he wasn't under pressure. It's not a good thing.
Right.
What is interesting, though, is because it's so out of character with the rest of his career, you spend the first half of the season, you're like, okay, when's this going to hell? Like, the wheels are falling off this wagon sooner or later. When's it happening? Then you reach like the halfway point, and you get beyond that, and you're like, well, maybe this is one of those weird years where a guy, for some reason, is able to completely put together this anomalous season in his career, and we're going to see Kirk Cousins playing well under pressure all season long. And then you spend like the last half of the season thinking, well, maybe that is going to happen.
I mean, you could make it through a season.
Right. The other interesting matchup in this game is I ran these numbers ostensibly to mock Kelvin Benjamin, but the other end of the scale was fun as well. So I was looking at contested catch numbers, right? Because Kelvin Benjamin's a contested catch guy. So, and the reason I looked at this is because there was that play last week where he was throwing a perfect pass in the end zone, jump ball, way over the top of the defensive back, still somehow conspired to not come down with it. You're like, if you can't come down with this contested catch, you genuinely have no purpose out there. You are a contested catch guy who can't win contested catches.
You're an offensive lineman.
Right. So his overall catch rate this season is 37%, and his contested catch rate, and by that I mean the percentage of contested targets caught, is 20%. That is basically as bad as anybody in the league, right? It's top 5 most pathetic contested catch rates of anybody. But the other end of the scale, so last season Stephon Diggs led the league in contested catch rates, 65%-ish. Thielen was in the top 5 somewhere. No, 6th. Thielen was 6th. But Stephon Diggs is right up there again this year. He's top 10 again this season, and you could make a pretty good case that the best contested catch receiver in the NFL is like 6 foot 185.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right.
Stephon Diggs. Antonio Brown's way low on that list, right?
This year, yeah.
Was he like 2 for 18 or something like that? One was week 1 against Denzel Ward.
Yeah. No, he has, I think he's bottom 5 somewhere as well. But unlike Kelvin Benjamin, I don't think he's always bottom 5.
Oh, no.
He's typically among the best.
I mean, that's the only thing Kelvin's supposed to be able to bring to the table.
Yeah.
So I've taken Minnesota in this game, and you've taken Chicago. You're trying to get our Bears fans back.
No, I mean, it's in Chicago. And
you're a big
they're going to destroy the Vikings offensive line with Khalil Mack.
Yeah, and I'll be interested again.
Plus
Trubisky versus Zimmer. I can't wait for this matchup. So much like last year, felt like Philly fans got really mad at us, and I said, "Where are the nice Philly fans? Could you guys come out and, say hello?" Mm-hmm. I'll make the same pitch to Bears fans. Where's Lauren Cox and our friendly Bears fans?
I was listening to a radio thing earlier this week where Eagles fans were defending booing the team off at halftime against the Dallas Cowboys because screw what they did last year. That was last year.
What have you done for me lately?
What have you done for me this season? And you haven't won a Super Bowl for me this season, so I'm going to boo you.
I'm going to really piss them off. Just like, Santa, I know you brought me toys last year.
Right. Where are they now?
What are you doing for me this year?
Yeah.
I'm going to boo you until I get my toys.
But like you said,
Philly fans hate when you mention that they boo
the most
Santa.
Interesting thing about Eagles fans is that the most mad we've ever made them was when we told them their offensive line was the best in the league.
Oh, my gosh. Our mentions blew up every time Carson Wentz faced pressure in the first 5 weeks last year. It's like, where's that best offensive line?
Yeah.
Best offensive line in the NFL? You kidding me? Our offensive line's terrible. We hate that you told us we have the best offensive line.
I think that actually articulates them better than booing Santa Claus.
I agree.
It's that,
we complimented you.
Right. I understand the idea of hating everybody, but you actually got the most mad at us when we told you your offensive line was the best. That's Philadelphia fans.
And they were really last year. So the same thing we're doing with Trubisky this year. Last year was, hey, Carson Wentz has really good stats. He's not playing at that level. He's a little bit below that. He's not an MVP candidate in our world. Got a lot of hate for that as well. There's probably, like you said, most of the time passer rating and PFF grade will match up. There's probably 5 or 6 quarterbacks a year where it's either far apart or wide enough that it changes the narrative. And Wentz was one of the guys last year, Trubisky this year.
Quarterback is that thing, though, where I think you're going to piss off most fan bases if you tell them their quarterback isn't great.
Yeah, that's true. So be encouraged, Bears fans. Trubisky's going to continue to get better. It's just going to be sunshine and rainbows going forward.
I mean, we did finish that point by saying it was a good thing. Because,
we did.
You know, the offensive system is great. The receivers are great.
I think everybody gave the thumbs down and bailed
before that.
Yeah,
right.
I think so. All right, let's move on to the rest of the slate. Did you have a Dalton coaster, or is this in a random order?
I think you can apply the Dalton coaster to the Washington Redskins.
Oh, I like it. So Houston Texans at Washington Redskins.
Right.
Go.
Yeah. I mean, what the hell are the Washington Redskins right now? I think we've been saying for a while that I think the Houston Texans are probably a little bit overrated, but this Washington team is crazy. We talked about that statistic that they've never experienced a lead change yet this season. They either win handsomely, they lead from the get-go, or they lose, and they've never shown the likelihood of going back and reversing that. So now they're going at home. That defense has been up and down. The offense has been basically on the shoulders of Alex Smith and the running game, but the receivers aren't capable of getting anything done. Sometimes they look really good. I know you keep saying that they're like the worst 6-3 team ever, but sometimes they do look legitimately good in those wins. And then when they lose, it looks abysmal.
So that I guess now I'm going to the George and Eric theory, which is like, all right, you can defense is dependent on who you play, essentially. So if we look at the Washington Redskins getting absolutely torched by, say, the Saints, torched by the Falcons, and who else? And they lost to the Colts, right? So 3 pretty good offenses where they had a good defensive effort. Credit them against the Packers.
Yeah.
Even though the Packers they're not as good as a normal Aaron Rodgers-led team, but they beat up on the Arizona Cardinals. They beat the Panthers. That's a pretty good offensive team. They beat Dallas. They're in shambles. They're not a great offensive team. They beat the Giants, holding them to 13. They're a bad offensive team. And they beat the Bucs, who, this was just the weirdest game in history. They gave up 495 yards and 3 points. So the point that the analytics guys always make is that when a team is ranked well defensively, you can actually just go back and point it to which offense they played. Therefore, offense is the stable part of the entire equation. And that's where I think it's just tough to believe in the Redskins, because their offense is not an offense that you can get behind.
Yeah.
Because Alex Smith, that passing attack, it's in the bottom third of the league.
Right.
And the defense is good when they get a good matchup, and then exploited when they get a bad matchup, essentially.
Yeah, I just don't know that actually that whole theory makes sense. I think it's probably true overall for the weight of large numbers kind of deal. I just don't know that it explains this Washington team, because, like you say, they did beat a pretty good offensive Carolina team. They did. They have beaten some good offenses. It's just that I don't think that this team is remotely consistent week to week, and when it doesn't seem, it's not anything in the middle. It's either really good or really bad.
Right. Well, it's a pretty good stretch that they have here. Texans at Dallas. Is that Thanksgiving? Yeah, at Dallas on Thanksgiving, and then at Philadelphia. So a couple division games after the Texans. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. The Texans don't have a ridiculously difficult schedule down the stretch here either. And now they've got the Colts and the Titans making a move in the AFC South. It's going to be a tough stretch run in the AFC South here.
So I chose Washington in this game. Who did you go with?
You're a biased columnist.
I just want something interesting to happen so I can write about it.
You're a Washington columnist now.
Yeah.
I took Houston.
Okay.
I took Houston. I'm not a believer in the Redskins.
I'm not either, but I'm not a believer in the Texans either.
Well, there we go. This will be a good game. Should be an interesting game. Carolina Panthers at the Detroit Lions. Another couple fan bases that hate us. This is great. Have we pissed everyone off yet?
We should. I mean, this is the thing we should be tracking, right? If we could get this put up on Parker behind us, just start ticking off the fan bases as we piss each one off.
If you're a fan base and you like us, let us know, just so we can, talk some hate about your team.
Yeah, so we can get the set.
Are the Carolina Panthers, what are they, 6-3? Are they the worst 6-3 team in history? They just got absolutely destroyed by Pittsburgh last Thursday night. They're going to Detroit. Detroit just got destroyed by the Bears. Detroit's been pretty inconsistent, too. I still feel like they've just kind of regressed back into what they should have been the last 2 years from a roster standpoint. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
Carolina still doing some nice things offensively. I thought we keep talking about grade versus stats. Cam Newton had those 2 easy touchdowns to Christian McCaffrey last Thursday night to keep the stats pretty. But his pick 6, Sam, under pressure, and he literally chucked it into the middle of the field to no one.
That was terrible.
That was one of the worst decisions you'll see. Easy pick 6 for your boy Vince Williams, right? Oh, no. Vince set up. Who had the pick 6?
It was Vince, wasn't it?
Did Vince set up? Did he put the pressure on?
No, I think didn't he get the pick 6? Because he redeemed himself with like 2 plays after one ridiculously horrible play in coverage.
I'm in my own head because I saw Vince or someone Vince thanked someone on Twitter for it or something. I think he thanked Bud Dupree, whoever got the pressure. I think that's what it was.
Could have been, yeah. I'm pretty sure he got the pick because
Vince had the pick 6.
He made like 2 plays after getting eviscerated by Christian McCaffrey down the sideline initially. Yeah. So Christian McCaffrey has developed into this every down player to the point where they just went and released C.J. Anderson. Yeah. He is playing so much, we don't even have a need for you on the roster. Now, I'm sure C.J. Anderson was kind of like, hey, guys, how about you cut me so I can actually get some playing time somewhere? And they were nice about it.
Good.
Sure. Right. But like Christian McCaffrey has turned into such an every down player that they have had no reason for any other running back. So how much he's been playing, Cam Newton has 569 snaps this year. Christian McCaffrey has 554.
That's crazy.
Like, he's almost never off the field.
That's still second to Todd Gurley, but I don't have the Rams have their bye week yet.
I don't know, but I guarantee the percentages won't be the same, right? Like Christian McCaffrey's has got to be higher.
Right. McCaffrey this year, 54 receptions on 62 targets for 439 yards, 4 scores, forced 10 missed tackles. Just an efficient receiver that they're using. I like the way they're moving him around, using him, schemed up a couple nice plays for him the other night as well.
Yeah, 96.3% of his snaps.
That's
Christian
crazy
McCaffrey is on the field for. And Todd Gurley has been on for just 84.5.
Yeah, that's crazy for a running back.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, running backs do not play that amount.
I mean, that's
a
workhorse back in the day.
Right. It would be notable for any running back, but it's particularly notable when you're saying it's Christian McCaffrey, a guy who is, a small back that people wanted to label almost a scat back style guy. He's the biggest workhorse in the NFL right now.
Yep. So who do you have in this one?
It's a good question. Who do I have? I went with Detroit. Home. See, Steve, in the dome.
And I went Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Wow, I'm the only person taking
Panthers.
Detroit?
Yeah, people aren't believing. I mean, they're a little better team in the dome, but I'm taking Carolina. Let's get to Dallas Cowboys at the Atlanta Falcons.
Before we do that, out of curiosity, do you think that if he was given a running start, Christian McCaffrey could actually move Damon Harrison backwards if he hit him? Like, let's say he had a 10-yard head start, was running into the line, and the only thing there is Damon Harrison like this, just ready to engulf him. Do you think Christian McCaffrey would even move him backwards?
No.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know.
You also saw McCaffrey's weakness on Thursday night in pass protection. Got whooped for a sack. Also gave up a hurry. He doesn't have to do it too often, but it's ugly when he really has to. And that's what makes me think he's probably not going to put a dent in. Where did that come from? What kind of question is that?
Well, they're playing each other.
Yeah, but
it's not like it's out of left field entirely. I mean, you're talking about a running back that's running up the middle against a guy who's immovable in the middle.
Okay, fair point. Dallas Cowboys at the Atlanta Falcons. My question, will anyone on the Falcons have 6 sacks in this game like they did in last year's matchup?
I don't believe so.
You don't think so?
No.
Chaz Green's not starting. Adrian Claiborne's no longer in Atlanta. This was a beatdown for Atlanta last year in their matchup because, well, Dak got sacked 8 million times, 6 of which came from Adrian Claiborne. Dallas went from the team where we're going to blow the whole thing up to they beat the Eagles on the road in primetime. Like, how did that happen on Sunday Night Football? That was a huge turnaround when everybody's ready to just completely turn around that entire organization. Yeah.
The most interesting thing about this game could be the return of Deion Jones. who was activated from the injured reserve, made it through his first practice on Thursday, yesterday, today, depending on when you're listening.
Right.
Or even beyond that if you're listening super late, but I can't be held responsible for that. So Deion Jones could be back on the field, and as we know, he makes a massive difference to this defense with the coverage that he's able to have for that Falcons team. That could be fun because the Falcons have been another one of those teams that's been a little bit listless, a little bit inconsistent this year. He is a legitimate difference maker as a coverage matchup player.
He is. He really is. And next week they play New Orleans, and he's had some big plays against Drew Brees. I mean, it's really not the same Atlanta defense that we've seen in the last couple of years. And I don't think you chalk it all up to Deion Jones. It's everyone else too, but he is definitely a difference maker in the middle. The big difference for me in this one is Atlanta playing in a dome. Matt Ryan, a 65 grade last week outdoors. But his last 2 dome games, a 90 and an 86. So that's what we're expecting.
Well, at least it's progressed now from just Pennsylvania to all of outside.
Oh, he's been, but pretty much just, tri-state with a little bit of Washington in there.
Yeah.
He's been in Pennsylvania twice, at Washington and at Cleveland.
Yeah.
So, he hasn't traveled a whole lot. Not too far.
No.
For those road games.
But when it's outside, like it before, when it was just Pennsylvania, that was strange. Now at least we can put it down.
It was.
Anytime he has to go outside.
Through week 7, his only outdoor games were in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And he's coming off of back-to-back outdoor games in which his grading was okay at best.
Maybe Matty just doesn't like the snow. Doesn't like the cold.
But he's from Philadelphia. He's from
Plus his nickname's Matty Ice. It would be ironic if Matty Ice didn't like the cold weather.
It would be. It would be ironic. Still can't figure out what to make of this Dallas team. Mike Renner this week, our guy, talked about them having the best defense maybe in the NFC East. Maybe they're favorite in the NFC East in his mind, even though they're so far behind the Redskins. I love their defense. I love so much about their defense. They've been extremely inconsistent on the road. The fact that they did win in Philadelphia I thought was a massive surprise. But I don't know. I just like Atlanta. Even their good defense, going back to this whole theory, right? I don't care what their defense is. Atlanta's offense dictates in the dome, and I think they're going to be too much for them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they match up because there's a lot of talent on that Dallas defense. They've got some interesting kind of playmakers on defense, matchup kind of players. Those linebackers are extremely athletic and actually useful in coverage. You've got a guy like Byron Jones with that length to go one-on-one against a guy like Julio Jones. So I'm kind of fascinated. That's the side of the ball that I'm really interested in, the Dallas defense against that Atlanta offense.
Leighton Vander Esch flying around the field right now as well. So we're all taking Atlanta across the board in PFF.
Yep.
Can we go quick through some of these games?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we go slow. Sometimes we should go quicker.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay Bucks at the New York Giants. I'm taking the Giants, and so are you. Why?
Because the magic has run out.
That's pretty much
Ryan Fitzmagic is out of magic.
And the Giants are riding the high of Monday night's big comeback against the 49ers.
Sure. Also, Ryan Fitzmagic's gone. There's no more.
The Fitzmagic is gone.
Yeah.
His return to New York, it's going to be swirling winds. He can't throw in that. He did it 2 years ago, but, he had one good year, and it was okay with the Jets.
He's just, we said that right from the outset, right? He's probably not capable of a year of good play.
No.
You get X amount of games out of Fitzpatrick, and it's just a case of cashing in while you can.
JPP versus Nate Solder. Old Giants and new Giants.
Yeah, JPP hasn't been great. In fact, all of the additions to that Tampa Bay Bucks defensive line, the ones that were supposed to help Gerald McCoy, haven't. And
for the 5th straight year.
Right, but what's really interesting is McCoy has fallen off as well.
I know.
So it used to be a case of it didn't matter if all the people they brought in sucked because McCoy was still amazing. Now McCoy's not been amazing this year, and the people haven't been good. So it's still bad.
It's not great. Bucks at Giants. We're all taking the Giants except Renner and Zach taking the Bucks. They're going Fitzmagic.
Yep.
Let's go. Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. Not sure if you've got the captain.
The captain reading. Hang on.
But this week, we did a video on our best and worst offensive lines. We did a whole article on it. Colts are at number 4.
Yeah, we did. It's a good captain reading this week, so I'm glad you reminded me of that because I'd forgotten. Cue the music. This one's got some tricky words in it as well. I'm going to have to be on my game.
So I read it in my head, and I said, I don't know if I know how to pronounce that. I can't wait to see what Sam does.
Okay, perfect. Dearest Mother, I have received your care package of floured hedgehog thighs and hardened raccoon cakes. Scouts report the 10C Titans inch closer. Our unit continues its preparations in the hope of obtaining yet another victory. The men are sanguine as they ready, Andrew. Damn it. I got the sanguine part right, and then I ran the rest of the sentence off the rails.
Yeah.
The men are sanguine as they ready, Andrew.
You deserve that for the alliteration that you gave me for one of our voiceovers this week.
I don't know what your problem is. If you can't read words, that's not my fault.
That was ridiculous. Like self-centered scatback or something that you gave me. I
yeah,
don't know
you
what
came out of
say.
the room complaining about this sentence that I'd given you saying it perfectly.
I nailed it.
In 10 straight repetitions of it. I can't possibly be expected to say this thing I'm now going to rattle off 10 times without problems.
Well, I was angry.
Yeah.
And it made it work. In this game, we talked about the Colts offensive line, number 4 in the NFL. It is just amazing. So narratives can change based off of scheme and usage and all that stuff. And there's maybe never a better example where Andrew Luck goes from this guy who his entire career, deep dropbacks, thrown down the field, too many turnover-worthy plays, which he hasn't completely cut out of his game, but now a quicker passing game, a better offensive line. He's now faced the 6th lowest pressure percentage in the NFL, 29.5. The highest he's ever ranked in that number, Sam, is 19th. Most of the time he's in the low 20s, facing the most pressure in the NFL. He's got a 90.6 PFF grade from a clean pocket, second in the NFL in touchdowns with 21. By far the most protected he's ever been in his career.
Yeah, and the thing is, there were flashes that might be the way to go. A while ago, they were trying to protect him at times. They ran a few games of this kind of quick style offense earlier in his career, and he was fantastic doing it. So as much as they the entire game plan appeared to be built for years around basically, don't worry, he's made of pig iron, he'll be okay. We can have 7-step drops and have him killed, and he'll get through it. He's durable. And then he became very not durable, so we had to go to that system, and it turns out he's probably better doing that anyway.
And our guy, Zach Robinson, has a great take on this, too, because if you look at all of their pass concepts, it's what Zach always classifies as pure progression concepts. It's not just half-field reads. I mean, it's literally going from one side to the next side and all that stuff. And his theory on it was sometimes you just trust your quarterback so much. That's an example of putting a lot on his plate. You're like, okay, this is a complicated scheme, but he can handle it. But then it puts him in harm's way because it's deeper drops and all that stuff. When all of our numbers pointed to actually in the quick game, he is excellent. So if you do that, you can have some success. Mm-hmm. Tennessee, coming off 2 big wins, beat the Dallas Cowboys. They beat the Patriots, dominated them the last week. Can they keep it up? At Indianapolis, this is now a huge matchup. In the AFC South, Mariota's playing pretty well the last couple of weeks. And that Tennessee defense, I feel like we can still talk about defense. It still matters a little bit. The defense has made things difficult on opposing offenses the last few weeks.
Yeah. I'm still going with the Colts, though. I think this Andrew Luck team will be able to get some joy against that Tennessee defense. I don't think it's particularly good. And then the Colts defense, despite being a collection of weird bodies and no great scheme, is actually half okay.
They're running that cover 2 type scheme. Darius Leonard's number 2 in our Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year.
They basically just create this idiot-proof defense, and hopefully hope that will slow enough teams down. It seems to actually do that.
It does. We're both taking Indianapolis in this one. Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. I picked this before I knew who was playing quarterback, but I still picked Baltimore. So
Does
I guess
it even
didn't
matter?
Care.
That's what you got to ask yourself.
Matters a little bit.
Does it? So we thought we were going to see Lamar Jackson at quarterback, and I was kind of intrigued by that because we've seen Lamar Jackson as part of this gimmick quarterback package all the way through the season.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to see what the offense looked like with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Like, presumably they're not just going to run the gimmick package over and over and over again.
You have to let him play quarterback.
They're actually going to have an offense that's built around him, right? And it's probably not going to be the same one that Joe Flacco has been running. So I was really curious to see what this Lamar Jackson offense looked like. Then he goes and gets an upset stomach, and now we're going to see RG3 instead.
Yeah.
And an RG3 offense is probably not going to look great.
No, I don't have a ton of faith in RG3.
No.
So we all took Baltimore, but I might be regretting.
We all took Baltimore, and we're all sadly lamenting that choice right
Baltimore's defense does a pretty good job at home. So that could be a factor. Going against Dalton, injured A.J. Green.
All of the Tylers.
Bengals have a lot. All the Tylers. Bengals have a lot on the line here to try to keep their season alive.
Well, also they've got this, they have to You've got to have some kind of reaction, right? After getting the living crap kicked out of you by the Saints. You can't just roll into the next week and get that happen again. You actually have to try and respond in some way. Plus, Hugh Jackson's now in the building.
He's going to help the defense.
Right. A special assistant to Marvin Lewis.
Oh, man. That's the local news over here in Cincinnati. They're covering it pretty closely.
Yeah?
Yeah. Seeing Hugh at practice and everything, seeing the clips.
And Marvin's defensive coordinator now. He's like taking over the defense. He's like hands-on. Have you seen the B-roll in practice where he's like manhandling linebackers and stuff? Right.
You got to watch the clinic. You got to watch the overhead projector clinic.
I'm not watching 2 hours of OHP sheets.
Just watch the first hour.
No, I'm not going to do that either. If you can distill it for me in like 4 minutes. What do your YouTube metrics say? The average watch time? How many minutes do you get before somebody switches off? You put it into that.
I don't want to admit what
you put it into that number of minutes, and I'll watch it. Otherwise, I'm not doing it.
All right. Well, do that then. Okay. All right. Let's go. Pittsburgh at Jacksonville. Another one of those matchups that was probably more appealing before the season. I don't want to completely write Jacksonville off, and neither do you, because you picked them.
Your notes here simply read Pittsburgh. Pitt is hot.
They're hot.
They're hot.
Playing well.
Okay.
Big Ben's turning the season around. So this is what we said earlier in the year. The same Trubisky argument. Hey, Big Ben is the biggest difference between PFF grade and stats. The encouraging part is he'll probably play better because there's a history of him playing better, and that's good. The fact that he's managed a 90-plus passer rating while playing so horribly is a minor miracle. Wait till he starts playing well.
There are times we need to understand that this is actually a good message to be delivering.
Yeah.
It's like your quarterback is playing so much worse than his box score stats suggest. However, that means if he does come back and play better, things are going to be fantastic.
Right. That's where Pittsburgh is right now.
People don't seem to listen past the however part. They just switch off at the initial hate, and then, blind blinkers of rage come down, and they're no longer able to assimilate information.
That's right.
Because they're just seething in the corner.
That's what they do.
I mean, I would just, beseech them to listen beyond that part. Try and diffuse the rage and listen to the message that's being conveyed.
So this whole you can't bank on the defense and all that stuff. I mean, the Jaguars roster construction just epitomizes, I think, and this is why our guys had them with a major regression this year. Last year, they wanted to play this ball control system. Their defense last year was very good, but if you do look at the game by game, a lot of it was, we're playing Tom Savage in Houston. We're playing Deshaun Watson for only a half. The other half was Tom Savage. There was a lot of bad defense. They played Blaine Gabbert. You know what I'm saying? So their defense was excellent last year. And then because they were in most games, they ran the ball more than most. Leonard Fournette managed his 3.9 yards per carry. Blake Bortles didn't screw it up too much. And it's like, oh, this is the formula. The problem with that formula is it's tough to rely on the defense the next year. And at some point, you need your passing game to do something. And they don't have that.
Yeah. The Jags also just lost their best offensive lineman. Brandon Linder has gone down, which leaves them with no good offensive lineman. And really, this is the argument against Leonard Fournette, right? It's not that Leonard Fournette sucks as a player.
He needs linemen.
It's that if you have 5 bad offensive linemen in front of him, he averages less than 3 yards per carry, which is what we're seeing happen right now.
It's rough.
And actually, that was with 4 bad offensive linemen and 1 good one.
Right.
So now you have 5 bad offensive linemen because I'm going to assume that they're not able to pluck a backup off the bench to replace the 1 good offensive lineman they have because virtually no NFL team is able to do that. So let's assume that they now have 5 bad offensive linemen. Fournette was averaging 2.8 yards per carry before the 5th guy went down.
And you're taking Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Now this is to be fair, this is what you and I are tied in our picks. We're actually tied for 6th or so on pick watch.
Damn Browns got me.
So I'm assuming this is just so you could try to catch a game on me.
Yes, it is. I finally started the tactical lone wolf pick.
So we're going to be separated this week by
whatever happens
by this game in Washington, Houston. Everything else we have is the same.
Yeah.
And then Nathan is a game up on us.
He's gone with Green Bay.
Him and I have the same. We all have the same picks other than Green Bay.
No, you differed on. Oh, we also differ on Chicago, Minnesota.
Oh, we do. So
he's gone with me in Chicago.
Calling this Separation Sunday.
Right. He's gone with me on Chicago. He's gone against both of us with Green Bay. He has gone with Houston, so he sided with you there.
It's
They're
bad
the same.
podcasting.
It's terrible, right?
You're just reading a list. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. But we're going to separate ourselves in our list.
Yeah. We also differ later on as well. In fact, your idea that we only separate ourselves twice is laughable, looking at the list. Laughable. It's not even close.
Can we save Raiders Cardinals for the end?
The end of time?
The end of the podcast? That'll be the big finale.
Oh, yeah?
Best game of the week.
That's fine.
We haven't talked Eagles Saints yet. That's kind of a big one. Saints, best team in the NFC?
I don't know if they're the best team in the NFC. I think they now give the Rams real problems that they need to negotiate, whereas before it seemed like pretty smooth sailing, that it was just going to be the Rams all the way, and this would be the NFC team in the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not even talking about that they lost to the Saints. It's more that they lost, and that now it doesn't give them any margin for error to get home field advantage, which I think is important now, because I think in a neutral field, the Rams are probably a better team. Certainly if they get healthy, guys like Aqib Talib coming back, I think they're better than the Saints. But if you have to go to New Orleans, like that's a different ballgame. Like the Rams going to New Orleans, I don't know that they're the favorites in that game. And so the remainder of their season to me is basically ensuring that doesn't happen, which doesn't give them a lot of wiggle room. So the Saints do have this incredibly potent offense. The defense is... It's another inconsistent defense, right? They're all in the middle of the pack. They're all capable of more, seemingly, but they don't show it every single week. So you've got Sheldon Rankins, who's playing out of his mind in the last few weeks, just benching offensive linemen back to the quarterback every single play. You've got Cameron Jordan. You've got a lot of talent there. You've got old Alex Anzalone making plays before he inevitably breaks something.
Yeah, that's going to happen. Has he played more NFL snaps than he played in his 6 years of college? I think it's close now.
But I saw somebody recently referring to him as an incredibly productive college player.
What?
Right.
He literally played 650 snaps in like 5 years.
Right. Now, I mean, no, there's no way of you can't even spin that to being like, in those 600 snaps, he was incredible. No, if you only played 600 snaps in 5 years, you were not productive. The end.
You were not. Poor guy. Yeah, he had 5 years there at Florida. Part of a massive linebacker recruiting class, I remember, and just never could get on the field. He's got 388 NFL snaps, so he's almost caught up to his college snaps.
He's also already broken himself, right? He missed half of last year injured.
No, he had a pretty sweet pick against the Rams, and he preceded me on NFL Network.
You know who it was that said he was an incredibly productive player? I've just remembered.
It was Siciliano.
No, it was Marvin Lewis on the radio talking about them. That's who it was.
That's like the Wilkes quote we'll get to. Yeah. So, again, I just think when you look at how difficult the NFC is, the Saints, this is no easy game, even at home for the Saints. The Eagles, they're depleted in the secondary, but I don't think you write them off as just an easy win. And then the Saints have to turn around and face the Falcons on Thursday on Thanksgiving night. So it's kind of a big stretch for the Saints with every single game mattering when it comes to home field advantage.
And as much as you're now claiming the defense doesn't really matter, the Eagles have a defensive front that will make life difficult for every offense they face. They are too good to not be a factor in basically every single game. Now, even though they're going up against the Saints, who have one of the best offensive lines in the game, like Fletcher Cox, if it wasn't for Aaron Donald, would be seen as maybe the best defender in football right now. He is an absolute force. I would say that even including Aaron Donald, there is no defensive lineman capable of ragdolling a potential blocker as much as Fletcher Cox is.
We gave him the best bull rush on our ESPN article.
Yeah, like he will
best
take
NFL player at everything.
He will take powerful guards and just toss them aside like they're not even there. I mean, including Donald, I have seen nobody ever do that to certain players the way Fletcher Cox is able to do it. Plus, they've got 3 edge rushers in the top 15 in total pressures. Like the defensive front is still pretty ridiculous. It's just that they're exposed too much on the back end.
So if you want to just sum the Eagles up quickly, right? Mm-hmm. In 2016, going into the year, we said, this roster is incredible. But my concern was that they were weak. They had the worst receiving core in the NFL, and they were bad at corner.
Yeah.
Last year, in the Super Bowl year, the receivers, playmakers played much better. The cornerbacks played much better. Are they now essentially the 2016 Eagles because they're depleted in the secondary? The playmakers are still pretty good with Alshon Jeffrey and what Zach Ertz is doing, but the secondary is back at that 2016 level that makes them so inconsistent.
Yeah, the secondary definitely. The offense, I think, has its own problems, and I don't know that they have put their finger on what they are yet. Like, the players are still there. The playmakers are still there. They brought in Golden Tate. The talent is there. Carson Wentz is still playing pretty well. The scheme isn't quite clicking the way it used to. They're not having the same success with RPOs and all that kind of stuff. They just haven't quite figured it out yet on offense. And I know it's hurt a little bit by the offensive line being dramatically worse. Jason Peters playing through a torn bicep and a busted up knee is struggling, and Lane Johnson has been out. So the offensive line is struggling more. But I think there's more to come from that offense.
What else it is, though? Last year, Carson Wentz was just so good on third down.
Yeah, that's part of it.
So good on third down. And obviously that moves the if you're bad on second down and you're that great on third down, you're automatically moving the chains. And that regressed back a little bit. And that's a huge difference.
All right, 2 more games. What do we got?
Broncos at Chargers.
Yes.
Any reason for the Broncos that the Broncos can win this game?
No, there isn't.
All right, we're taking the Chargers. Phillip Rivers, I think, is number 3/4 in the MVP race.
Yeah, I mean, they would need Phillip Rivers to have one of those random Phillip Rivers disaster games for that to be a thing.
He hasn't had it yet.
No, right. So this would need to be it for the Broncos to win.
Yeah. And then the pillow fight.
The game of the week.
Oakland Raiders at the Arizona Cardinals. The worst pass rush in the NFL.
Not just in the NFL, but
ever?
Yeah.
That we've ever seen?
At least that we've ever seen, right? I'm not going to say ever.
Since 2006.
The worst pass rush PFF has ever graded.
22% of dropbacks, they've created pressure. The next worst team in the NFL is at 27%. That's the Colts. A 5% difference at that low. I mean, it's absurd.
Aaron Donald on his own has 3 fewer pressures than the entire Oakland Raiders defense.
Well, pass rushers are tough to find, Sam.
They are.
That's the thing. Against the Arizona Cardinals, no, they haven't given up the most pressures.
No.
But they have the lowest grade. They're our worst ranked offensive line because of what they do as run blockers, poorly, what they do as pass blockers, and then it's the speed of the pressure that gets there, and also the number of pressures per snap. So a lot of times we give you pressure rate. It's just how many snaps was a quarterback under pressure. The grade might tell you there was actually 3 pressures on this play.
Right.
That's the Cardinals. That's all of their linemen grading poorly in standard drop situations, standard pass protection situations. They've been bad. So something has to give here.
They have the worst pass blocking efficiency score of any team in the league, which is
So
essentially a per snap basis, but with weighting towards sacks. So they are quantifiably the worst offensive line in the game, the worst pass blocking unit in the league, going up against the most inept pass rush we have ever seen.
That's the reason to watch.
Yeah. The incredibly movable object against a tremendously resistible force.
Maurice Hurst breakout game?
Which thing will crumble and run away first?
I got Oakland tearing up that bad offensive line.
Well, Steve Wilkes was very impressed with their ability to get after the quarterback.
Cardinals head coach Steve Wilkes. That was a legit quote.
Yeah. Very impressed. Now, I suggested a bunch of explanations for said quote. Either he was joking, or he lost a bet to somebody, had to say it. He was working from random answer cue cards, where whatever was asked, that was what he was going to read out the answer to.
I think that was it.
He was drunk. That's possible.
What if he was drunk reading cue cards?
True. Or he was watching the 2017 Raiders where they had Khalil Mack.
That's also a possibility. It's tough. Sometimes you click on the wrong year.
Yeah,
when I'm watching film.
Exactly. You just pull up the wrong year. Look at this guy tearing us to pieces.
Very impressed. So I'm taking Oakland in this game, and you're taking Arizona. Oh, yeah, so we had a bunch of differences.
Yeah, why did I do that?
Don't you love when you go back after we analyzed
like, what
the
was
game?
I thinking?
I don't have numbers for this situation, but I think if you're that bad of an offensive line, that might give the bad defensive line a chance
I would agree
to
with
do
that.
something.
Yeah.
So this might be the time. If the Raiders don't get pressure on Josh Rosen in this one, they're really hopeless.
Great pass blocking typically neutralizes great pass rushing. I suspect that terrible pass blocking still finds a way to allow pressure against terrible pass rushing.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
All right.
This is it. Grind your gears.
Yeah, I got something this week. So, defensive backs celebrating an incompletion that they had absolutely nothing to do with.
Ooh, right? Good one.
In particular, a guy that gets absolutely torched off the line, running a yard and a half behind the receiver, desperately trying to catch up, and the ball is overthrown, or the receiver drops it, or the receiver managed to step out of bounds somewhere along the way. DB gets up straight away with the incomplete sign, celebrating, eyeing the receiver down. You're like, dude, you just got smoked off the line. You cannot celebrate. You're not allowed to do it. You were terrible.
I don't even understand it because we saw you get torched.
Yeah.
The receiver knows he torched you.
Yes.
Your coaches know you got torched. Like, you're not getting a positive.
Everybody in the building knows
day.
you just got smoked.
You got 0 for 1 from PFF stats, and you probably got a -1 grade.
Yeah.
I mean, your coach isn't giving you a positive just because it was incomplete the next day.
No. There are many circumstances in which a defensive back should not be allowed to celebrate, and that is definitely one of them. Now, if you do actively break something up, by all means, finger wag. Or shake your head. Shake your head's a good one. I always like the head shake. Shake your head or finger wag or do whatever you like. The incomplete sign, that's also good.
Even when you break it up, sometimes it's after being torched.
I'm still okay with that. Well, most of the time I'm okay with it. You would have to be very badly smoked for you not to be able to celebrate at the end of that. Ultimately, if you redeemed yourself, you made up the ground, you got back, you broke it up, I'm okay with celebrating. But if you just watched it happen when you were killed, no, stop it.
The interesting thing, there's two responses when you get smoked as a corner. There's the one, which is it gets dropped or it's overthrown and you celebrate. The other one is when it's caught and you start pointing.
Yeah.
Then it's like, all right, where's my safety help? I was expecting a safety. Where's my safety?
You
start pointing. There's a lot of blame going along. Yeah.
Can I read you a little funny tweet just to end this podcast on a happy note? I'm going to send you home happy, Steve.
Let's do it.
All right. So this is a tweet update from Esquire. A correction to an article they made. You get these journalistic corrections. We got to fix an error.
Very important, yeah.
A mistake we made in the piece. So,
of course.
Update. An earlier version of this article referred to Matthew Whitaker as a football star. With 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in 3 seasons at Iowa, it appears he was merely an unspectacular player. We regret the error. That's an outstanding correction.
That's the correction.
I'm a huge fan of that one right there.
They just said he's not a star.
Right. It turns out he's merely adequate.
He's just any old fullback or something.
Unspectacular.
Probably. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, there's no better note to finish it on that then.
See?
Week 11. Everybody enjoy it. Hope you guys loved Thursday Night Football. Hope you enjoy Sunday's action. The only way to enjoy all the action is with PFF Elite. That gives you the green line picks and premium stats version 2.0. We'll be back here on Monday with our Week 11 review.